Alright, what's going on everyone? In this video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Innistrad Midnight Hunt's 2 commander decks so you can decide which deck is best for you. We won't be going over every individual card, so you can check the description for links to the complete deck list, but hopefully this guide will give you an idea of how the decks work, so you can pick which one's best for your playstyle. So first off, let's take a look at the Undead Unleashed deck. Since it's pretty straightforward, it's a tribal zombie deck. It has Will Helt the Rot Cleaver as the commander, who says if another zombie you control dies that doesn't have decay, you create a 2/2 zombie token with decay. And a decaying zombie is just a zombie that has to be sacrificed after it attacks. This deck is focused on just creating a giant army of zombies and then either killing your opponent with them or giving you alternate uses like being able to sacrifice them for value, stuff like that. Even Will Helt himself will let you sacrifice them to draw cards, so even if you don't want to attack with them and lose them all, you can get extra value in some way. Will Helt can sacrifice them to draw, and there's other sacrifice outlets as well. So first off, this deck loves to go wide with zombie tokens. You get all kinds of crazy token producers like Curse of the Restless Dead, Overseer of the Damned, Army of the Damned. The first two will put tokens into play under certain conditions, so it's like a constant stream of zombies when they trigger, and the army just straight up puts 13 2/2 zombies right onto the battlefield, so you can just constantly build up this massive board of undead. And there is plenty more too, like Liliana, she produces tokens, Diregraph Colossus, Dread Summons. I can't stress how good this deck is at creating just tons and tons and tons of tokens. There's probably another 3 or 4 screens worth of token producers. We don't have time to cover all of them, but one of them is Endless Ranks of the Dead. That's a lot of zombie tokens. So yeah, tokens, zombie tokens. Once you assemble this massive board, there are multiple paths to victory. First off, you have your usual run everyone over with an army of zombies with various lords like Cemetery Reaper, Death Baron, Diregraph Captain, right? Cemetery Reaper notably can create extra tokens itself. The Death Baron gives them all Death Touch, so that's not fun for the opponents. And the Captain can actually just kill opponents by itself because it drains tons of life, 1 life for every zombie that dies. And your zombies, the tokens a lot of times have decay, so they just kind of like waste away and drain the opponent's life total. That's totally fine. And that's not all the lords, of course. There's Lord of the Accursed, there's Tomb Tyrant, Liliana's Mastery is a pseudo lord. So lots of ways to pump up this massive pile of zombie tokens we create, and we can also make this army evasive with things like Gleaming Overseer, Eternal Skylord, Hordewing Scab. The first gives Menace, and the other two give Flying, which can be absolutely devastating considering just how many zombie tokens we can create. Of course, sometimes we can't attack for whatever reason, so the deck has plenty of alternate uses for the tokens, like with Empty the Laboratory, Ravenous Rotbelly, Eater of Hope. The first lets you sacrifice X zombies and then get that same number of zombies off the top of your library. The second will let you sacrifice up to 3 zombies when you cast it, and then everyone else at the table also has to sacrifice that many creatures. The demon will let you sacrifice zombies to destroy problematic creatures, and remember, you just have tokens everywhere, tons and piles and piles and piles of tokens, so you can just dispose of them. Some of them have decay, so they're gonna die anyway, so you can just throw them away with these things and get all kinds of cool value, all kinds of extra value for getting rid of tokens that you get really easily and also are gonna die pretty easily anyway. There's also ways to take advantage of all this sacrificing, like with Butcher of Malakir, Prowling Geist Catcher, Crowded Crypt. The first makes everyone sacrifice as well when your stuff dies. The Geist Catcher will get +1/+1 counters, and Crowded Crypt will gather counters as things die and then spit out a new army of undead when you crack it open. So you're producing an army of tokens, you can just kill your opponents with them, you can make them evasive, you can sacrifice them for value, and then you get value for sacrificing things. And there's plenty more we don't have time to talk about. This deck could do some very powerful stuff, literally like bring an entire board of zombies from the graveyard. Well, you see it on screen. It does some pretty crazy stuff. There's plenty of stuff here to do some wild, crazy nonsense. But basically, the idea is it's a tribal zombie deck with a very heavy focus on producing tokens and overwhelming your opponents with just a crazy amount of zombies. If that sounds like your thing, Undead Unleashed might be your deck. Next up is Coven Counters, a deck that has 2 thieves that are literally in the deck title. It's based on the Innistrad Coven mechanic, and it's a +1/+1 counter deck. I guess it's also tribal humans, so there's that, but mostly it's a +1/+1 matters Selesnya deck. The commander is Lenore, which says at the beginning of combat you get a +1/+1 counter, and then if you have Coven, which means you need to control 3 creatures with different powers, you get to draw a card. Now, keep in mind, you get to counter every turn no matter what. You only need Coven to get the card draw. And since you get to dish out a +1/+1 counter, that can help you manipulate the power of your creatures to increase the likelihood of getting that free card. And then the deck is filled to the brim with +1/+1 counter producers. Things like Mikaeus, Kerbis, Citadel Siege, all of these are great because they allow you to constantly manipulate the power of your creatures for Coven. Mikaeus can add counters to himself or remove them to add counters to everything else. Citadel Siege triggers at the same time as your commander at the beginning of combat, and then between putting counters with Citadel Siege and putting counters with your commander, it's much easier, very easy, to get 3 different powers so you can get that card draw. And plus, remember guys, you're also just dishing out tons of counters and making massive creatures, and the deck has tons of payoffs for distributing counters. You get things like Juniper Order Ranger, Enduring Scale Lord, and Champion of Lambholt. So the Ranger will put a counter on everything you play and itself. You play a creature, that creature gets a counter, the Ranger gets a counter. The Scale Lord will see every counter you put on another creature and then put an additional one on itself. And the Champion will get counters every time we play stuff and then make things unblockable based on its power. It's very powerful, and you don't have to wait for the Champion to grow in power either. You don't have to play a bunch of creatures because there's plenty of ways to just dump a bunch of counters on it right away. I mean, there's lots of ways in this deck to just put lots of counters on everything, because that's what it's all about. It's just about putting tons and tons and tons of counters on stuff. These are all just examples of things that get kind of out of control when you're putting all these counters in play. And then we also have lots of ways to power up creatures with counters on them, like Enoch, Bondkin, Abzan Falconer, Elite Scale Guard. They just make our entire board more powerful because most things are going to have counters, and then they just become, they get flying, they get first strike, they tap stuff when they attack. It just gets kind of crazy. We also have more payoffs for having Coven. Remember, part of this deck is having different powers. It's very, very easy. So we also get things like Sigardian Zealot, Sigarda's Vanguard, and Stalwart Pathlighter. The Zealot will let you select one creature of each power. So if you have like a 2/2, a 4/4, a 5/5, and a 7/7, you can pick all those, right? You can pick one of each. And then they all get pumped up based on the Zealot's power. So at the very minimum, a bunch of creatures are going to get +3/+3 every single turn. And that's assuming that the Zealot doesn't have any counters on it, which is unlikely. There's so many ways to dish out counters. You can put 2 or 3 counters on this thing and then suddenly, like half your board is getting +6/+6 every turn or something pretty crazy. The Vanguard will give creatures double strike when it enters, and it has flash, so you can do that at instant speed during combat for blowouts, right? It's a combat trick. And then the Pathlighter will make your board indestructible if you have Coven, which, as we've discussed, is very easy. So that's actually pretty powerful, makes your stuff hard to kill. And even if we do struggle to get Coven, let's imagine a scenario where for some reason all these +1/+1 counters and all this sort of power and toughness manipulation we can do by distributing counters, just say for some reason we just can't get Coven. Well, we have some easy ways to just get it for free, kind of, because we have Somberwald Beastmaster, we have Bestial Menace, and we have Tristani's Summoner, and all of these produce a bunch of tokens with different power. That's the idea. You play them, you get like a 1/1, a 2/2, and a 3/3 or whatever, right? As you can see on the screen. So you get 3 different powers automatically just by playing these, and that's like instant easy Coven. If you're struggling with that for some reason. And there is, of course, plenty of other really powerful effects that we just don't have time to go over, so be sure to check the deck list in the description. But basically you're making big, giant, massive creatures with tons of +1/+1 counters, getting some value for controlling those creatures, assuming they have different powers, and most likely just steamrolling over people. That's the idea. Your stuff's gonna be very big, and you have lots of ways to take advantage of that. So there you go, everyone. Again, check the description for the deck list. I'll also leave Amazon affiliate links to the product pages of the decks, though I do encourage you to buy them from a local game store if you have one. But you can find the deck list, you can find the Amazon pages below if you're interested, and hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, leave a like. I don't make Commander content, so if you only watch Commander stuff, I mostly play Standard and Modern and give deck building advice for pre-constructed decks, Challenger decks, starter decks on Arena, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, check the channel out. Otherwise, it's fine. I don't actually make Commander content, but hopefully that was helpful regardless. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.